So we're going to change it to the same time as MSGNA. All right, so I'm going to issue this command, and it ran successfully. So now what we're going to see is the FSGNA. As you can see, the modified time is 4/13/2008. They created 4/13/2008. And we don't need this utility anymore, so we're just going to delete it. And now if we sort it by date modify, you're not going to see this file. Okay, so now we have to actually make this fsgna.dll run in the operating system. And the way to do it is there's a quick registry hack. And you go to you go to HE local machine, software, then Microsoft. And then rather than going to the Windows folder, there's a Windows NT folder in the registry. That's the folder that you need to modify in current version winlogon. And what you do here is basically add a new string value and call it GNA DLL. And the value, we are gonna basically do this, fsgna. So the winlogon.exe is the process that actually loads the MSGNA, the normal one. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to go to winlogon and say, hey, you know what, you're going to load MSGNA. While you're at it, might as well load my malware too. So this FSGNA is going to be loaded with winlogon. So as you can see, we added a string value, GNA DLL, and the path is for our fsgna.dll. Now, I can't just log off and come back to it to see that it worked. Since winlogon.exe is running in the operating system, and any attempts to end the task will have me reboot. So I'm just going to be nice and reboot the system anyway. Now, this was one malware that gave us a lot of blue screens. So I think this is our test. So we're going to restart the system so that winlogon.exe actually starts again, and this time, hopefully we'll have, rather than MSGNA, loading MSGNA only, it will load FSGNA as well.
So while it's rebooting, it would take a couple seconds to talk about third parties. If you see in some of these, in most of these examples, these organizations are relying on third parties to support their IT infrastructure. And so this is no example. This is just another example of that. They're hosted someplace, or they have people who are supporting them in-house. And we're time and time again, we see those third parties, whether it's a hosting provider or an IT support company, really falling down on the job from a security standpoint. They don't really see security as their responsibility, and so they don't pay attention to any of those things. This is basically not even an exception here. This is basically one of the norms, where you see a device that's basically used for remote access and just basically is unkept and is then compromised by an attacker.
Right, and if there's one thing as a security administrator or a consultant or an IT person, if you've got one thing is like remote desktop running on port 3389 is a recipe for disaster. We've seen it for like years after years. The attackers are targeting remote desktop, and they have so many of those crackers for just remote desktop. And a lot of like environments, like for this one, this is a pretty high profile a hosting center. They had that terminal server to for clients to log in. And if you get this terminal server, you basically can get all of the clients. So if anyone is using terminal server as a jump server, that's it, right? So what I want to show you here is that this malware is pretty smart. Like if I type in like wrong credentials, it's not going to log. So in the interest of time, I'll just be nice and actually type in the right credentials. So what you're going to see with this malware, winlogon.exe is going to load MSGNA and FSGNA. And now that we entered the right password, it would intercept it, and it would put it in a folder, in a system32 folder. So let me just show you this file, and then we will move on. Okay, so now we're at system30 folder. You see this file created on 7/28, that's today, users dat, and that's how neat the output is. So in a domain environment, this would be the domain, TW is the account, and here's the password. So that's basically the end of GNA malware. We're going to move on.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So the next piece of malware that we have This is our network sniffer rootkit. Now, we've seen network sniffers. I'm sure many of you have used network sniffers in the past. But this is actually one that's a rootkit, and it's customized and has a lot of other features in it. And Jibran's going to go over those in the demo. But basically, talk a little bit about the victim. Now, this is an international VoIP provider. Now, they had two different methods of business. One, you can actually get an account with them and set up a VoIP connection and make your phone calls through them. Or they also had those prepaid phone call cards that they sold at the malls. And so they had two different methods of payment, one online, one at kiosks at the malls. And basically, that's how the environment was set up. And so the attackers knew that there's going to be data in these environments that we could probably go after. And so they started to go after that. One thing to note, talking about hosting providers, when we did this investigation, we actually went to the data center, went to go find the data center. You check out their webpage, it looks really nice. We talked to VoIP provider, and they say, yeah, we found their information on the back of a tech magazine. It looked like it was a legitimate company. The website looks really flashy and nice. You look at the tour our data center. It has all these nice racks and flashing lights, and you have Billy the tech that's smiling and hooking up some cables. And when we actually showed up at the real location of the data center, it was actually a barn in the middle of nowhere. And to our surprise, actually, we show up at the data center, and the barn has the doors unlocked. It's not locked. There's a house next to it, and cats start to come out of the barn towards us as we're walking up. And so the data center itself actually was home to about 20 farm cats, as well as a whole bunch of racks of servers that were there. And actually, personally, we didn't really know what the cats were doing there at that point in time. And actually, just last week, I was watching television with my son, and the preview for Cats vs. Dogs 3D came on. And then I had a revelation that the cats were actually running the data center for this organization.
I believe it, there were far more cats than actual people.
And then the piece here is that the payment switch itself that they were using to process all these kiosk transactions was actually not only hosted at a hosting center, but it was also supported by another third party with that system in the environment. And so Jibran's going to go through the network sniffer rootkit with you.
All right, so the new Spider Labs wallpaper means that we got a new malware, so we're good here. Okay, so let me show you the pieces of this malware. So I'm going to go to my sniffer directory, actually. Malware freak show, sniffer. There you go. Okay, so let's see what we got here. So again, we have a sys file. Sys file, that's kind of like a hider.sys. We don't have to do much guessing here. Hider, it's hiding all these processes. What I want to show you real quick is basically the strings for system32.dll. So basically, this is the config file for the malware. And as you can see, there is this log name, which is in Windows directory. Anyone want to guess what win32.exe tool is by looking at these command line options? So this is basically how this is ngrep. So the attackers have packed in a version of ngrep 2, and this is basically the regular expression for track2 data. There's some password. We don't know yet what it's for. Host name. Now we had to modify this a little bit to fit this demo. The username and the password. So without further ado, I'm gonna show you what happens when you run this malware. So to run it, you just run from command line winsurf32.exe, and as you know that we should see a log file, system40.log file. So I'm gonna go to my Windows folder, and sure enough, we have a system40.log enough that's written just recently. So I'm going to do the same thing. Open this up with TextPad. Right now, there's no data because we haven't done anything on the network, so the malware has not sniffed any traffic yet. So what I'm going to do is basically start Firefox, and what I want to show, we don't have a point of sale application here, but I am actually going to go to another host on port 5500, just so that sniffer can do. So we're going to treat this as our back of house server accessing the front of house terminal for payments. And what we see here is basically just track data files. Again, these are the check files, and let's just open all of them together. So again, this is basically the temp payments, right? That are transferred from a front of house point of sale terminal to the back of house server. And there's track data in it. So now we're going to go back to our file and see that it's updated. And what we're going to see here is basically everything. So not only that it's parsing track data, but it's actually taking all the packets that contain track data. So as you can see, it's got an interface name, the matches, this regular expression. Here are the IPs and ports involved, and this is basically that data here. Okay. So one more feature of this malware is that it FTPs the data to an attacker FTP server. And we've installed an FTP server on the local host to kind of show you that it actually does that. So we have the server here, FTP root, but we noticed that there's no file here. Any guesses why the file's not here? So yeah, so it's basically right. It's basically timed. And it's not a random time. It's like every day at like 1 a.m. It actually transferred the data. So that 1 a.m. is kind of the time when everyone's sleeping, and that's when the malware kind of kicks in. So what we're going to do here is change the time again, and this time I'm going to change it to 12:59 a.m. And I'm going to change the seconds to apply it. So we've got about 10 more seconds to see if the malware actually does transfer the file through FTP. And this is the FTP server running on localhost, and that's where the attacker's server is basically. All right, so it's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, there's a file that popped up in the attacker's FTP server. So now, what we're going to try to do is try to extract this file. And I'm just going to do extract here, but it's password protected. Now, we saw one password in our strings for system32.dll. Oh, yeah, here we go. So I'm just going to copy it, try this password to see if it works. And sure enough, this password that's there is actually make sure it's that. There you go. So it extracted the file successfully, and the file that's going to be here is that same system40.dll or system40.log file that had track data. So those are the automated things that the malware is doing. Writers are doing these days, and that's about it for the sniffer malware. And we have one more malware, and we're I think running out of time, so we're going to rush this a little. All right, that's duper.
Okay.
Okay.
So this last piece here. So we talked about the memory dumper. We saw the credential stealer, and we saw the network sniffer. Now, all three of those environments had a very, very low security posture. We talked about all the various problems that they had in those environments. Now, when you talk about a very highly secure environment, as the example here, U.S. Defense Contractor, these environments are very, very locked down. There's no inbound access. The only outbound access they have is 80 and 443. And then, of course, there's email that flows into the environment from the outside from various people. Now, when you have those circumstances, the real way to get to compromise those environments is through a client-side attack. And so we saw this early this year in one of our cases where the attacker studied the organization very, very well. They actually knew people within the organization. They intercepted some emails that were written by the people within the organization, and they crafted a message to many of the people that were in the management groups within that company. And basically made it look like it was coming from the CEO of the company. The email was written in the same sort of language that the CEO would write. The signature was the exact same signature that the CEO would use. And when you clicked on the PDF file, there was basically was using an Adobe Ode that launched the attack. And so we put this together in this demo. Of course, we couldn't use the real data and the real information, all the information from the U.S. Defense Contractor. So we decided to use a different company in this example.
All right. So this is our last demo. Okay. So basically, the code word for this malware is Dwight Duper, right? So how many are Dwight fans here? All right, you guys are going to love it then. Okay, so So it's a prank on Jim, basically, so I'm going to pretend to be Jim, and I'm going to come into office one day, open up my Microsoft Outlook, and see all these emails, right? And as you can see,